Look at a castle today, and you'll see a romantic ruin. You see a monument to kings and queens, a fairy tale in stone. But that is a deception of history. In these walls, nothing was decorative, nothing was an accident. Castles were engineered responses to siege warfare. Every stone, every tower, and every narrow doorway was designed with one cold, calculated purpose: to make the price of entry so high, so bloody, that the enemy would turn back before the first arrow ever flew. Medieval engineers spent centuries perfecting the science of the unconquerable. Today, on Iron Registry, we're decoding the cold, hard strategies of siege defense.
The castle's first line of defense wasn't built by masons, it was carved by nature. Before a single stone was laid, the architects made a choice: location. Castles dominated the high ground: hills, cliffs, rocky outcrops. This wasn't just for the view. Height grants three distinct advantages. First, total surveillance. There are no sneak attacks on a mountain. You can see the enemy coming for miles. Second, exhaustion. Attackers had to fight gravity before they could fight the garrison. And third, range. Geometry favors the high ground. Defenders could rain death down on the enemy, but location was just the foundation. The real engineering began with the walls themselves. For centuries, wood was the primary defense. It was cheap, fast, and flammable. But as siege engines evolved, the castle had to adapt, leading to the rise of the curtain wall. By the 12th century, these were no longer fences, but artificial cliffs of stone, 20 feet thick. Battering rams became useless, bouncing harmlessly off a structure built to outlast empires. At the foot of the wall, you will find a slope known as the talus. This angled skirt served a brutal purpose. Any debris dropped from the ramparts would strike this slope and shatter outward, spraying the enemy forces in the killing zone with deadly efficiency. Crowning the wall were the crenellations, the jagged teeth of the fortress. This design gave the defender a distinct tactical advantage. The gaps allowed for a clear line of fire, while the raised merlons provided instant, impenetrable cover. It turned the top of the wall into a shielded shooting gallery. Yet the greatest threat to these walls came from below. Sappers would attempt to undermine the foundations, digging tunnels to collapse the stonework from beneath. The solution was the moat. While often romanticized, its purpose was purely pragmatic. Water is heavy, and water seeps. It effectively drowned any attempt to mine beneath the castle's feet.
For the attacker, a square tower offered a gift: the corner, a blind spot where the enemy's arrows couldn't reach. But by the 13th century, that gift was taken away. Engineers introduced the round tower. With the corners gone, the blind spots vanished. Every inch of the perimeter was now exposed to the defenders above. The round design offered a second hidden advantage: resilience. A flat wall takes the full, brutal force of a siege engine's blow, cracking under the stress. A curved wall, it forces projectiles to ricochet. The tower doesn't just resist the attack, it deflects it. This architectural arms race culminated in the concentric castle, a fortress within a fortress. Breaching the outer wall was no longer a victory, it was a trap. Attackers would find themselves in a calculated killing ground, a narrow open lane between the walls, overlooked by a second, taller ring of towers. They were boxed in, with no cover and no escape.
Even if you breach the main gate, the nightmare isn't over. It lured attackers into the gatehouse, a dark, claustrophobic tunnel designed for slaughter. Through murder holes in the ceiling, defenders could bypass the attacker's shields entirely, dropping heavy debris or pouring liquids onto the packed mass of soldiers below. The gatehouse was further secured by the portcullis. This heavy grille dropped vertically. In sophisticated castles, these were used in pairs to create a kill box, trapping the enemy unit between two dropped gates, leaving them exposed to fire from the murder holes above, with no escape. In the towers, the spiral staircases were deliberately wound in a clockwise ascent. This utilized the biology of the average soldier against him. An invader swinging a sword in his right hand would constantly strike the central newel post, restricting his reach. The defender, backing down the stairs, had the open curve of the outer wall to swing freely.
every architectural choice was a weapon. The deadliest weapon in a siege wasn't a catapult, it was the calendar. Most castles weren't taken by force, they were taken by hunger. A siege was a brutal game of who runs out first, and medieval engineers designed the castle to win that waiting game every single time. The first priority, water. Without it, a castle falls in days. Engineers dug massive wells directly into the heart of the inner courtyard. This wasn't just a convenience, it was total water independence. As long as the rope held, the defenders were invincible to thirst. Next came the larder. Massive stone granaries and vaulted cellars kept grain, salted meats, and ale cool and dry for years. Some fortresses even kept livestock in gardens within the outer walls. This self-sufficiency turned the castle into a stationary island, capable of outlasting the very empires attacking it. Here is the irony. The attackers were often in more danger than the defenders. The army outside lived in muddy tents, exposed to the elements. Supply lines for thousands of men were easy targets for raids, and in those cramped, unsanitary camps, disease often killed more soldiers than the castle walls ever did. The final stroke of medieval engineering wasn't a bigger wall, but a hidden one. The postern gate was a secondary, secret exit built into the very fabric of the fortress. While the main gates were being hammered by rams, these back doors allowed the garrison to maintain a connection to the outside world, smuggling in fresh provisions or sending messengers past the blockade. Some of these exits led to vast subterranean networks. These tunnels allowed a castle to breathe. They turned a passive defense into a lethal, flexible offense. Defender could launch a surprise sortie from behind enemy lines, striking where the attackers were weakest, then retreating through the earth before the enemy could even draw their swords. Medieval engineers didn't just stack stone, they turned geometry into a weapon. The castle had evolved from a simple shelter into a sophisticated machine. These fortresses weren't built merely to survive a siege, they were built to make the very idea of one unthinkable. The unconquerable castle was the result of 5 centuries of iterative engineering. Each generation learned from every fallen gatehouse, every breached wall, and every failed foundation, until they reached this, the pinnacle of defensive logic. The greatest victory is that which requires no battle. In the shadow of these walls, many wars ended before the first arrow was ever loosed. The principles discovered in the mud and blood of the 12th century still govern our world today. Whether it's modern cybersecurity or high-security government architecture, the castle mindset remains. The medieval castle remains one of humanity's most successful engineering achievements. It was a structure so effective at its purpose that it defined the face of warfare for half a millennium.